I'm delighted to have with me today in the studio Dr. Michael Hsiao, who is a sociologist and also the chairman of a brand new think tank called the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation, which deals primarily with exchanges between Taiwan and Southeast Asia, South Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. Dr. Hsiao, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good to be here.
So I want to start off by talking about Taiwan's foreign-born community. Yeah. Now, when I first came to Taiwan 20 years ago, when we thought of foreigners in Taiwan, we thought of people who looked kind of like me.
That's right.
So white people from Europe, from North America, white-collar workers. However, that actually was incorrect, and it's even more incorrect today when we're talking about Taiwan's foreign-born community.
That's right.
Can you maybe paint a picture for us? What does this community look like in Taiwan today?
Actually, it started the landscape, the ethno landscape changed in 1990s when Taiwan began the first wave of a Go South policy, and we began to bring in a lot of foreign workers from Southeast Asia. Mainly from Southeast Asia. And then from then also we have a lot of cross-border marriage migrant, also in 1990s. And that really become a very major primary sin in Taiwan, in Taiwan's ethnic composition. And that was actually reinforced that Taiwan has long been a diverse ethnic society. 400 years ago. And now this composition now, we have about 880,000 of total. In that, I'm talking about 720 the migrant workers.
Okay, 720,000 migrant workers in Taiwan, and primarily from Indonesia.
Indonesia is a top, and then followed by Vietnamese, and then Philippines, and then Thailand. Okay. And then another 160,000 cross-border marriage migrant.
Okay.
Who 90%, more than 90% married to Taiwanese men. And mainly top one is Vietnamese, followed by Indonesia, and then Philippines and Thailand.
And this, of course, doesn't include cross-border marriages with
different.
Chinese.
Yeah, right? And actually, if you look at, they don't have we do not accept migrant workers from China, but we do have a quite big number of cross-border or marriage from PRC. And actually the number is bigger than 160, about 250, more than 250. But again, how many people really live in Taiwan?
Yeah.
That's different. So I guess it's about 120,000 who really live. The women, Chinese women, live with Taiwanese husband in Taiwan. The other 140,000 they live in China.
I see.
So men go to China
and stay in China where they're married.
Work, mainly through work, and then actually in the past, a lot of our older Chinese women who married to old soldiers, veterans. Who married to. And so the composition, the age, motivation, and their social, cultural, political inclination are very different. And so we would focus more on the Southeast Asian.
And so your foundation, the Taiwan Exchange Foundation, actually primarily deals with people from Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how people from Southeast Asia have really kind of changed the face of Taiwan in terms of their contributions and what they, do in Taiwan. I want to go back just to a moment to the foreign-born community. So people who look like me or have the same situation as me, we only make up about 1 in 20 of all of the people that were born outside of Taiwan.
That's right.
So to think of Taiwan's so-called
You're
foreigners,
a minority.
We're a minority
within
a minority.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And you see, actually, the Southeast Asian workers or spouses, mainly women, actually changed the landscape, the ethnic scape. We can see them, their faces on the street, in the neighborhood, in the block of a neighborhood, and especially weekend. If you Sunday, you go to the train station, you can see huge number of them sitting there singing, eating together, chatting, talk about their feeling and work situation, and then how much they miss their hometown, and that is in train station. And if you go to Zhongshan Beilu, and you can see the church there, and they have many composed of
Filipinos, yeah.
So really, everyday life they become a part of a Taiwan social everyday life landscape.
And this is something we wouldn't have seen in Taiwan 20 years ago. It would have been only in small pockets that we would have seen this. Now it seems like it's become more part of everyday life in Taiwan.
That's very true. And also, you mentioned about contribution. I think, of course, two things. Practically, they supply the necessary labor.
Okay.
And among these 720,000, almost half work in the manufacturing sector, male migrant workers. The other half is about the domestic helper, but small minority, small number, mainly is actually from a caretaker in institutions or at home to take care of Taiwan's elderly. So that is very interesting. They supply the labor force for our production. And they also replace the role of a family member who can have a 24 hours to take care of Taiwanese elderly.
And these are both very important in Taiwan because there is a slowing birth rate, and there are fewer people who are filling these jobs, and also, especially for manufacturing and for the long-term care.
That's right.
If we didn't have migrant workers that were fulfilling these jobs, what would Taiwan look like?
Well, look, we will lack of a shortage of labor, and we will shortage of and they cannot replace the wives, especially the middle class housewife, who wish to work outside, and they can replace them. So actually, workforce is one story. The other one is for the family. Actually, Taiwan family, the family structure is become globalization, Southeast Asianization, and they play the role as a daughter-in-law, or granddaughter who care of the elderly. So we all need it. This is a social demographic change.
Now, as we're talking about this, I want to give you a picture of Taiwan's total population. So there's close to 24 million people in Taiwan. And of those, nearly 1 million are either migrant workers, came here by marriage, or work in Taiwan. So with this increase in number of people coming from Southeast Asia, has there been any pushback in Taiwan society against this group of people?
In Europe, many countries in Europe, and there is an anti-immigration populist mentality, and mobilized by the populist leadership. But in Taiwan, thanks God, we don't have that evident. But still the subtle discrimination or prejudice are there. But we do not have the collective effort to push out this one, because we need it. It's a part of, and also Taiwan society has been quite tolerant to the outside population. When you think about Taiwan history, 6,000 years ago is the Austronesian tribes. And 400 years ago, the Han Chinese moved from Guangdong and Fujian, right? And then later, the Qing dynasty had more people move in. And then the Japanese occupation. And in between, there is a Spanish, Portuguese. And then after World War II, and then we have a official migrant from military and a government official after the defeat of the Nationalist Party. So we got
from China.
China, and then foreigners. Western, everyone, and then Southeast. So actually, it's really we are used to this kind of ethnic diversity.
What do you think Taiwan will look like 10 years from now in terms of the population makeup? Do you think that the numbers of Southeast Asian immigrants will continue to rise in Taiwan?
It's hard to say. I think it really is a supply and demand. And worker probably will continue in a slower pace, steady increase, but cannot be increased too much. There are two reasons. One is we upgrade the technology industries, so we might not need the blue-collar workers that much, that not desperately. Secondly, when the Southeast Asian country become richer, they don't want to send people here because it's a hard job. You know, and in recent years in Indonesia, there even has called economic nationalism. You say, why should we always send our people to foreign country to work? Why don't we create our own? You know, so when the economic become better, the quality of life is better, life condition better, and they were more reluctant to come aboard. So I would say in 10 years now, the workforce was slowed down, still increase in a slower pace. In terms of marriage, migrant probably was slow.
Also slowed down.
Also slowed down. And I forgot to mention that what the landscape changed, the population changed because of their participation in the Taiwan's family. We have 160,000 spouses from Southeast Asia, right? And actually they gave birth. And now we have about 90,000 children who we call the new Taiwanese, the second generation, in the primary school and elementary school and middle school. And you include the preschool, that probably easily goes to 150.
I've seen a figure that says that for like first graders in elementary school in Taiwan, 1 in 10 will have a parent from Southeast Asia.
Yeah, but it's not exaggeration. It's not. Yeah.
So that's really changing the face of Taiwan.
Yeah, and then your school you can see, and then many data. There's some talk will say, okay, they are children with a learning disability because the mother cannot speak Mandarin, cannot speak Taiwanese, so they will provide obstacle for their learning. But it's not true. We have a survey done by the Minister of Education and found out they are equally smart. Equally smart, and they are actually better in creativity. And of course, they are always have the learning difficulties, children, regardless you are Taiwanese born or you are Taiwanese or Southeast Asian descendant.
And also, they're speaking more than one language as well. And so this is actually for not only themselves, but for their parents, for the mother. Often this can be an advantage or can be actually a great resource for Taiwan that's looking to build bridges with Southeast Asia.
Very true. You know, if you look at some of the material we found, the reporting, at the very beginning when the children go to school, at the beginning, they feel embarrassed or humiliated for their mother because the mother cannot speak Chinese, Mandarin or Mandarin. But later, when they 1 or 2 years more later, they become very proud of their mother. You know why? Because their mother can speak Indonesia. The other kids of mother cannot speak. And they are very proud. And plus, when these spouses, these migrant become, they are mostly in Xinbei and then Central and
New
South.
Taipei City, yeah.
Yeah, the biggest concentration. And they are very willing to take part in the community activities. So they become an integral part of a community and they help the community, you know, for the community. So people respect them. And so the kids feel very proud. So you can see the psychological mindset changes, the children.
And a lot of these mothers are also doing a lot of very important jobs as well. In certain sectors of Taiwan's economy, for example, this is just one example, but the suan cai, or the pickled mustard greens, if we didn't have predominantly women from Southeast Asia, or even from China as well, coming to Taiwan, this sector of the economy would maybe not exist anymore because a lot of the people that are doing this are older. So they're looking to pass on this to someone else. And a lot of young people don't want to do that work.
I did a study with my 2 colleagues. We work on the eateries, the small restaurants, you know, run by Vietnamese spouses. And we interview them, we go there to talk to them in the north, central, and south. we found this, they can release their homesick with food. Food tasting, release their homesick. Secondly, increase their economic independence.
Yes.
And thirdly, networking.
Yes.
Networking with their fellow sisters. They call each other sisters.
Yes.
Or with the neighborhood. So that was very important.
Well, it gives them a place where they can actually come together and where they can meet people. And the actual sign of the restaurant isn't just calling out to customers. It's also a signal to other people who speak Vietnamese that this is a place where I can meet people.
Community center.
So I'm curious to know how this changing population of Taiwan is or is not changing Taiwan's identity and its place in Asia. Do you think that this has had an impact on the way Taiwan views itself?
Yes, I think so. I think, of course, in the 1980s, Taiwan went through a process of social diversification, polarization, and democratization, liberalization. And as an increase from not just being an ethnic Chinese, but also Taiwanese. So Taiwanese identity has been established or being shaped before those migrants came. But with the migrant came, they become more and more. So we are part of this big ethnic diverse family. So actually reinforce Taiwanese become a part of Asia. See, we can talk to Asian, not just Chinese. You know, and in the past, 1960s, 70s, Taiwan's identity very much in Northeast Asia, where we were more familiar with Japanese or Korean. Of course, Chinese too. But 1990s, Go South policy, and now the new Southbound policy, we are actually genuine, we are Asian. So the Asian identity has increased for the common Taiwanese.
So the average person would also consider themselves to be Asian or part of Asian, not just ethnic Chinese or just Taiwanese.
That's right, I think so. I think this Asian identity, we haven't seen actually data, but I think in Taiwan, this Asian identity is increasing. Yeah. If you compare with Japan, I would say Japanese data probably will show less that obvious, evident Asian identity.
It's a very strong Japanese identity.
Yeah. Or they would say, oh yeah, we are global in a very abstract term. But Asia is more regional, more concrete, right? Yeah, you cannot jump to the global. I'm a global man, I'm a cosmopolitan, and without thinking I am actually more close is Asia. Yeah.
So a lot of times when countries diversify their interests in other countries, it's for economic considerations. And I think this is very true for Taiwan as well.
Yeah.
The urge to not put all of your eggs in the China basket is a big one, especially in recent years, with relations with China being a little bit colder than they were in the past. Do you think that there are other reasons why Taiwan is hoping to diversify its interests in other countries that are not connected to the economy?
I think so. I think this, you are very correct that in 1994, when the Go Southbound policy started under President Lee Teng-hui, there was an economic consideration, economic strategic consideration, moved from westbound to southbound. But later,
by westbound you mean Europe?
To China.
Just to China.
Westbound, China.
Okay.
Yeah, investment.
Close west. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
West and to south, but they later more and more, not just profit, not just economic incentive, more and so social, cultural. You need to look at labor for economic consideration. We need the labor to come in, and we wanted to invest in Southeast Asia. That's economic. So what I say that. The current thing for the New Southbound policy, as I see it, 5M. One is to make profit, still continue to make profit, mutual benefit.
Yep.
Second, make jobs. We make jobs in Southeast Asia. We also make jobs here, as I mentioned, 720,000. We also make friends. That's our foundation is doing try to make as many friends as possible.
And that's important for Taiwan, which is not a part of the United Nations, to make connections with other countries in different ways.
So we do NGO, think tank, cultural exchange, young leadership, and then prevent the disaster prevention and so on and so forth. And we also make families. That's a very unique. Even though Japan also have quite a number of migrant spouses, but they don't talk about it. And Korea too. Korea also, and they talk about it too, but not to our extent. We have a policy how to help them. And this last one is make values. You know, we share friendship, we respect individual freedom, and we want to enhance democracy and so on and so forth. So actually expand it. We call it comprehensive. So compared to in the past, economic link, now we have comprehensive link and people-centered, very much, not just money-centered.
I want to talk finally at the end of our interview today a little bit about some of the people-centric successes that you have seen at the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation over the short year that you've been around. What kinds of successes have you seen from your perspective that you think are really worth celebrating?
We, with many people's help, domestically or internationally, I think we make Taiwan more friendly, accepted, and then they will think about Taiwan for Taiwan's own sake, for Taiwan's own merit, rather than in the narrow framework of a Taiwan-China relationship. Taiwan should be liked, should be received, should be welcome for Taiwan's sake. So that's why our foundation doing the think tank cooperation, young leaders exchange. We deal a lot of young people. We emphasize young people's exchange, and then NGOs and culture artists exchange. So we reach to the all aspect, walk of life.
What's been the highlight for you for since the foundation was founded last year?
I think we really truly an Asian country, and when we receive many people from Southeast Asia, we feel that we are belong to the bigger family, immediate families. I think at the highlight, I think we really make Taiwan become more being taken seriously and friendly.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
And best wishes for the future developments for the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation.
Glad to be here, and thank you very much.